Hello, this is just a quick lecture on the pastoral epistles and Hebrews. We're going to start first with the book of Hebrews. Hebrews ends like a letter, but it's missing all of the introductory parts. So many scholars tend to think that it's a sermon and not really a letter. Here are just a few notes. Content. The book of Hebrews focuses on the scapegoat ceremony of Leviticus that is associated with Yom Kippur. You might want to look up Yom Kippur, Y-O-M, one word, K-I-P-P-U-R, a second word. It means Yom is day in Hebrew, Kippur is atonement, the day of atonement, on Wikipedia or Google it and look it up on the internet. Yom Kippur is the high holy day of the Hebrew liturgical year. And in the time of Leviticus, it was the one time when the priest would go into the Holy of Holies. He would sacrifice a bull as a sin offering for the people. And then the blood from the sacrifices would be sprinkled on a goat called the Azazel. And the goat would be sent out into the wilderness, bearing symbolically all the sins of the people. That's where we get the name scapegoat from this particular ceremony. And you may recall that Satan sometimes is depicted looking very Billy Guff with the little horns and the Billy Goat goatee and red and what other characteristics does Satan have? Oh, sometimes Azazel is the name of a demon. Well, it comes from this Yom Kippur ceremony. Anyway, in the book of Hebrews, Jesus functions like both the high priest who offers the sacrifice and the sin offering sacrifice itself. The book of Hebrews contains the best and most elegant Greek in the New Testament. Sometimes people think that the book of Hebrews is written by Paul, but it's not included in early lists of Paul's writings. And it's likely it wasn't Pauline for a couple of reasons. First, we know that Paul's mission was to the Gentiles. But because of the Yom Kippur imagery in the book, there's importance attached to the Jewish tradition. This is in quite a bit of contrast with Galatians, for example, where the Gentiles don't worry over much about Jewish traditions. It really has, the second point is that it assumes elsewhere that the audience is very familiar with the Hebrew Bible. The author, for example, in chapter 10, lists famous Hebrew personages who modeled faith. It's roughly chronological and starts with Cain, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, and goes right on up to David. The readers are expected to know who these people are, and that's the reason why it's assumed that it's intended for a Jewish-based audience as opposed to one that has a lot of Gentiles. The pastoral epistles include 3 documents: 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus. They address the issue of leadership in the church, who should be a pastor. And that's one of the reasons why they're called pastoral epistles. They're essentially the books of polity of the early church. They depict 3 levels of leaders, and there are requirements for each level and fixed forms of ordination. It's from the pastoral letters that we get the ideas that lead to the ordained leadership of the church, as opposed to just a charismatic or local leader who runs a local congregation. By the time you've got the pastorals, you actually have ordination taking place. The 3 levels of leadership are bishops, then presbyters. The word presbyter in Greek means elder. And the Presbyterian Church as a denomination takes its name from the idea that it is governed by elders. And the third category of pastoral leadership reflected in the pastoral epistles are the deacons. So you have bishops, presbyters, and deacons. Sometimes the letters are associated with Pauline authorship because, or the Pauline concept, because Timothy is one of Paul's co-workers in Acts. And Titus is mentioned in 2 Corinthians and in Galatians. So that's where we get the Paul connection with the pastoral epistles. Yet frequently, many people do not consider the pastorals to be genuine Pauline letters. And there are 3 reasons for this. First, the church that is portrayed in the pastoral letters is not the small, newly formed house churches of Paul's letters. Instead, the church represents a much later period of time when the church is well organized and has formed a bureaucracy. A second reason is the vocabulary of the pastoral epistles is very different from that of Paul. For example, a key concept in the pastoral letters is sound doctrine. In the known Pauline letters, however, Paul talks about his opponents and names them. He never pussyfoots around and hides behind the concept of sound doctrine, those who teach sound doctrine and those who do not. Paul just comes right out and says, Apollos is a problem. So the vocabulary is an indication that these are not written by Paul. And the third reason is some of the earliest listings by the church fathers of canonical books of the Bible do not include these 3 books. They don't include them and list them as potential writings for the canon at all. They're just not on the list. And when they do appear on lists, they are separated from Paul's writings, not lumped in with Paul's writings. So those are just a few short points about the pastoral epistles. Thank you.